Hey y'all, it's Sarah, and you guessed it, it's another marker video, except for this one is geared strictly for markers that I found at Dollar Tree. So I brought several options, because that's the thing I get asked about the most. How am I using so many markers on my paper? Or what markers am I using? Literally any kind. You can see I don't have a preference. Cheap ones, good ones, it doesn't matter to me. It's how you use them. But I am going to kind of tell you whether or not these look like they will work on Happy Planner paper. And I've already started playing with some of them, just so you don't have to watch me swatch this many markers. But I wanted to kind of run through all of these. If you're just getting started and wanting to know whether or not you can use any of these, let's talk about it. So I've already discussed these right here. These are highlighters. They're listed as highlighters. I love this pack. As a matter of fact, I had to pick this pack up to replace the ones that I have literally wore out. I don't know if you can see that. I have worn those almost completely out. This is actually a really fun set. The colors are nice and soft. It's a small set. If you're just looking for a couple of markers to try out that are on the cheap that you can find at Dollar Tree, this is actually a really good pack. So I wanted to throw that one in there. The rest of these are just markers. They're just labeled as markers of some type. The first one I want to talk about, this one is Dollar Tree, but it's in their new section, their $5 section. I got suckered in because it said dual tip brush and marker set. This is by Liquimark. So let's talk about these real quick. I went ahead and swatched those really quickly, and I got a couple things to say about these. I did like the array of colors. You can see there's a pretty good variety of colors. There's 20 colors in there. Now, there's a couple of factors when you're trying to determine whether or not markers are going to work for you. First thing out of the gate, I want to say, let's see. There's a couple of spots. I'm using sections that were repetitive when I crossed over books. But I want you to see, let me pull that a little closer here. Can you see there's a couple little spots? Now, let me tell you what those spots are and when you can expect them. Maybe you can see that right here on a couple of the darkest colors, the blues and the purples. Now, everything else did fine. Those are about the colors you would expect it from, those darker ranges of colors. But there's a couple things that factor into that. First of all, it was a brand new pack, a brand new swatch. So if you're thinking that you can come in and swatch and determine whether or not you can use these on your Happy Planner paper, that's an iffy thing. Because sometimes when they're brand new and super saturated on the tips, no matter what brand it is, even if it's a brand that you've been told several times that will work, if they're brand new and saturated, which means those tips are really wet and juicy, you're likely to have bleed. It might need to be used a couple times before you start using it on your planner pages. Just because, same thing with ink pads, anything when you're dealing with ink, when they're brand new, they're the most saturated they're going to be. That's when you're going to have the biggest risk. So keep that in mind when you're swatching things. They didn't do too bad. I will say though, if you're looking at these thinking that you are going to get the type of brush tip markers that maybe you've seen, let me pull one out. These long brush tip markers. While I would say that these are brush tip, I want you to see the difference and what that tip is. And I'll show you the fine tip for this one. I do like the fine tip part. I kind of like that size for a lot of different reasons, especially writing. I like it for handwriting. But they did work for the most part, even the other ones being new. just right there in those edges. And a lot of times that comes from your hesitation when you start and stop. When you drop or lift your marker, anytime you drop or lift, there's usually like a split second of hesitation, and that extra little hesitation can be just enough for the ink to pool in that one little spot and kind of soak through. The other issue here for me could have also contributed is the fact that those colors crossed over, and I likely did it too fast before the next layer, the next column dried. So the moisture from one was hitting the edge of the other. However, for the most part, you can see this whole package worked for $5. Is it a good deal? You decide. It is dual-ended, so you can kind of gauge whether or not that's something that might be useful to you. This was written, this is the thickness of the other end. So not really a fine point as you would consider most fine points. The other ones, when you get this type of brush marker, their fine tip looks like that. So the next one, and I just briefly went through this one because most everyone is familiar with Crayola or probably already at least maybe tried them. I found this pack. This was in their dollar side of things or their $1.25 side of things. This super tips, and I've seen a lot of people talk about super tips. I actually like the super tips, but I only have a few. I have this pack and another little small pack. These are some pretty heavy duty colors. I mean, these are some stout colors. As you can see here, they are some pretty bold colors. I think it is magenta, sun yellow, grass green, light blue, and violet. I'm going to tell you that's not really light blue. But let's look at how they held up. Right here, they did fine where I did my lettering, right, where I did my writing, because we tend to hesitate a little bit more when we go to write a letter. I did have maybe a tiny bit, maybe you can see that. I'm trying to lift the paper up off so that there's some light coming up through the bottom so you can really see. Now laying flat, you wouldn't really be able to notice that, but with the light coming through the bottom, you might be able to see. The few little points that are there are literally right at start and stop hesitation points for my lettering. The one thing that I always emphasize is that you can just about get away with any marker. You can't let the ink sit on your paper. So you can't scratch color like we used to when we were a kid and just scratch that marker back and forth. You got to keep that marker moving so that it's not sitting there getting too much ink in one spot. So that has a lot to do with it. My hesitation points on my lettering is where I saw. Now, I can certainly color in a lot faster than I can hand letter, which means for me, I could color with these, even as bold as those colors are, I could color in on my Happy Planner paper with those just fine. Moving on, let's go to another set. So I did a few of them and then I left a few to swatch so you could see what I mean about the way you move across. So this is Jot's brand markers. They are washable markers. It just says broad line classic colors. So basically your typical broad line marker. These are brand new, so they should be pretty juicy. This is a good time for me to test. If they don't go through when they're brand new, odds are I'm going to have really good luck with them. Let's just go in. See what I mean? Right here at these start points and these stop points where the ink pulls up, those are your most likely spots to see bleed through. And even if you happen to with one particular color, there's always ways to cover it on your next week spread. But let's go through these real quick and see. That pink color did not match the cap and the barrel, but I will tell you, it's actually a pretty color. It's not as bright as you'd think. It's kind of a dusty pink. Sometimes they are very deceiving. Like, to me, that's not a... It's orange, but it's not a very orangey orange. And I'm going back and forth. That way, I'm moving down slowly as I go so that I don't overlap too much. I feel like the tips on these are pretty heavy duty. They're a little rounder than what you would get with like your classic broad style markers. They're thick like that, but they're a little more rounded out. This blue, in my mind, is probably going to be one of the ones likely to cause a problem if there's going to be. I can almost tell by looking at the markers, by the shade of color, which one might pose a problem. Wow, that is a color. These are definitely some rich colors. They're a little more colorful than what I expected out of this package. Kate, browns I'm really funny about. Like, I like having a lot of choices of browns. Because sometimes I want browns in a brown range. And sometimes I want browns in a reddish range. And I'm going to tell you right now, this black almost comes out like a dark, dark, dark brown. So let's find out. What did it do? Okay, the ones I pretty much would have guessed. So right here at those starting and stopping points, where the ink pools, is where I see any kind of anything. And that one there looks like it's because I crossed the ink over. The blue definitely did it. I figured it might, but the rest of them held up pretty good. So, can you use those? I could get away with using those. It takes a little time to build some confidence on wanting to actually put the ink on your paper. But as long as you're not just sitting there coloring in the same spot over and over, you usually can get just about any of them. I'm going to just label this real quick so that you know. And I've got one that's kind of a repeat because I just did a whole month of December with the crazy art versions. My little package on that busted right open. But let's talk about these right here. I just did, all of my December was done in, has been done in the crazy art version of these. I'm pretty sure that in comparison, these Crayola, all of them are going to be pretty close to the same. These are your classic size broad tip. You guys recognize these. We all recognize these. This is the Jot brand. That makes it nice to be able to just do one swoop and you're good. This one was also in the $1.25 section. That yellow is actually a really nice soft yellow. I was expecting it to be a little brighter given the color of that lid, but it's actually a really soft buttery yellow. The green's a really soft green. These might not be, depending on what type of pen you're using, these might not would be bad as highlighters. Okay, that blue could be a little questionable. Now remember, these are all brand new packs. So they're probably at their most saturated. They're at their juiciest, if you will. Let's see what they do. I am doing a little overlap this way. It's the most likely way for me to see where troubles might arise. Is that all of them? Did I miss any? No, I didn't miss any. Okay, let's see the results. Okay, they did. There was a little bleed through here. The red, really at my start and stop points, they all had a little bleed through. There was wherever I had a little hesitation. But these are all brand new markers. Once they're worn down, if you want to try a marker like this, if you've got kids, go get your kids' versions that have already been used a little and test those out. But I still would be able to color with these. As long as there's not heavy bleed, and I'm showing you guys that with alcohol markers where it is just super heavy bleed, I typically can work around it. Let's see. There's a couple other choices over here. I've got Crazy Art, the skinny versions. These look a little different than the super tips. These were the broad lines, as they call them. These are the fine lines. I typically like ones like this just for writing. So, let's see what it does on the writing part. Y'all ignore my handwriting. It's never been good. I'm working on it. I'm learning lots of things this year. And those start and stop points all over with the lettering, this will really tell me how well these will hold up. Wow, that yellow is hard to see. That is some yellow. That is definitely some yellow. Looks like their colors pretty much range with the other classics here. They all are about the same. There's a little subtlety here and there usually with the color. Ooh. I do like these kind of tips though. Well, that is not the purple that I expected to come out, but I like it. I expected a little more classic purple, but that's almost a mauve-y purple. So let's see what it does. Oh, wow, nothing. Even with the fact that there were start and stop points where I was writing, absolutely nothing showing through there. Even if I lift it, you're not seeing anything. So if you're looking for some colorful ways to write, these just did very well. This is the fatter versions of these, the broad versions of these, is what I did for my whole December, and they worked wonderfully, and they were some seriously bold colors. Let's see, was that everybody? Did I try everyone? I didn't want to leave any out because Dollar Tree has all these options. Oh, I'm going to go ahead and bring this little set in. Since I got a spot, I can put it on. The one that I've almost worn down if you're just looking for a fun little set. These were some of the first ones that I started with, which is why they look like this. That I started trying in my planner with because I had markers. I had other markers and was a little afraid of them. Look how soft that pink is. I was a little afraid of using them, but since these were highlighters, I figured I could try. So this is the first set that I really started trying to tinker with coloring with. Look how soft that green is. Isn't that pretty? And I haven't had any problems with these. The only thing that I'll say is that the yellow is a little brighter than the other colors. Like the other three colors to me are a little softer. You can see that yellow gets a little bright. It's still a soft yellow. It's just not quite as soft as those other colors. But if you're looking for a good little set of markers to practice a few things, this was kind of my first ones to really play with in my planner to try to test, because I've done Happy Planner for many years, but I was always afraid of markers or highlighters because everything I did bled through. And I realized it has nothing to do really with the markers other than avoiding obvious choices, permanent markers and alcohol markers. It's more about not just letting the ink sit there too long while you hesitate. You can't scratch too much when you color and overlap. Otherwise, you're pretty safe. So overall, I want you to look at the back. Now, these were all brand new packages. Hadn't played with any of them before. Hadn't colored with any of them before. So they were all brand new at their most saturated point. This is the extent with all this color on this side. You guys can see that. All that color on that side. There's a lot going on there. This is the extent of what is on the back. Now, did you bleed through? Yes. Is that going to ruin your next week's spread? No, probably not. Most of us can find ways to work around that. These were the ones that pretty much show the most bleed through, I think. A couple of the brush markers. Any of these are an okay investment if you're only wanting to spend $1 or $2 or just a couple bucks and test some markers out and kind of get your feet wet at it. Any of these choices will do. You can see there's color everywhere. There's even overlap on a lot of these. It was quick overlap though. It's the hesitation points where I had all the bleeds. The start and stop points. That's where we have that split second of touchdown and lift up. So not too bad. All of them worked out. All together, all these markers. Even if you pick them all up, you're still probably cheaper than the average pack of mild liners, S-notes, any of those things. That's why I always say it's hard for me to say what markers I like. Like, I get asked that a lot. I either get asked, what are my favorites? What am I using? How am I getting so much color on a page? And hang out with me on one of the other videos if you're still questioning that, because it's about the method that I use to put the ink down. I can get ink from top to bottom of my pages really without any problems, and you can too. You just got to kind of know how to work with this particular paper and work with the different inks that you're playing with. Most of these look like I should be able to use them at some point in my planner. I already knew I could use these. And I already knew I could use these. But these other ones were a little bit new to play with. So, hope that helps. Maybe pick you a pack up and give them a test run. Always find, since a lot of times our planners can overlap, depending on if you went from a 6-month or a 18-month planner to a 12-month or whatever, there's overlap. I usually pull those sheets out and use them for other things, especially to try to test run some swatches. So if you've got a few pages like that you know you're not going to use, pull them out, set them to the side, keep them there. You could use one full page to swatch pretty much everything you own if you need it to. That's the best way to know if you're going to have any problems, is just to go ahead and swatch it in your planner. But I'm trying to save y'all the effort by sharing my obsessiveness. Maybe it'll help. That's all I got. I hope you guys have a wonderful new year, and I plan to see you soon.